I'm John Law, this is Chasing Cars, and that is the BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe. This second iteration of 4 Series Gran Coupe is roughly based on the 4 Series Coupe that I reviewed late in 2019. But this car has 5 doors instead, with a practical hatchback, which means it combines some of the best features of the 3 Series sedan with the swoopy styling of the 4 Series Coupe. So does that make it the best BMW in this size class to buy? Well, that's kind of what we're going to find out in today's video, because it does seem that this kind of vehicle is gaining in popularity. It's a little hard to tell for BMW, having this car just released last month here in Australia, but for Audi at least, with its main competitor, the S5 Sportback, that car sells almost as well as the A4 sedan and drastically outsells the coupe. So that shows that lots of people really like this kind of car. Now, this particular model we have on test today is the M440i xDrive, and that is the range-topping version of the 4 Series Gran Coupe here in Australia, and it costs $115,900, which is about a $30,000 premium over the 430i. So you'd hope that this 285 kilowatt straight 6 under the bonnet is enough to make this car a little bit special. And spoiler alert, it is an absolutely wonderful engine. You've probably heard us talk about it before in other BMW 40i variants. Anyway, in today's review, we're going to evaluate this 4 Series Gran Coupe, starting with the high points and the low points of this car. First up, the good points. That creamy straight 6 with 285 kilowatts of power is hooked up to a gorgeously smooth 8-speed automatic transmission. Second, the beautiful adaptive dampers fitted to this M440i xDrive mean it rides superbly on Australian roads. Thirdly, for the good points, just how well put together this interior is. It feels really solid and quality, and it's very simple and easy to interact with, except for the fact that it's got this overly thick steering wheel, which kind of robs this car of steering feel. And that brings me on to the next negative, which is that this digital driver's display just can't do what this car's competitors can. Finally, the design. I know it's all subjective, but I just reckon BMW could have pushed this further, and I'm going to expand on that right now. So yes, design is subjective, and I'm not saying the 4 Series Gran Coupe is bad on the whole, because there are some really cool details in this car. In fact, the details in general are really nice. Starting with the laser lights, which look sharp and crisp, and then you've got these mirrors and these door handles that call back to BMWs of old with their sleek integration into the doors that all kind of begin to add up to a great looking car. But then there's just something about the proportions of not only this 4 Gran Coupe, but also the regular 4 Series in my book that just don't quite match the bold front end. And you can let me know what you think of the 4 Series in the comments section down below. But one thing I do really like, apart from the things mentioned before, is this paint color. Aventurine Red Metallic. Now, we tested the previous generation 440i Gran Coupe with exactly the same color in same rainy conditions, and yeah, for a $2,961 option, I do think it brings a little bit of extra class to the table of this 4 Series Gran Coupe's design. Now, of course, the back seat's different in the Gran Coupe, but also the boot, because like a Skoda Octavia, or probably more fairly this car's closest competitor, the Audi S5 Sportback, it's got a hatchback, and that's super practical for loading big bulky items like bicycles and flat pack furniture, though it doesn't really help loading our soccer balls. Now, little disclaimer here, I did only manage to bring 3 bags of balls. I forgot the 4th one, so when we get back to the office, I'll do my due diligence and tell you exactly how many we can fit in this boot, but its literage is 470, and so it's pretty decent. As for other features, you've got this 12-volt socket here and a little cargo hook as well, and this quite sturdy feeling cargo blind. And then, of course, you got a power tailgate, because this $115,000 BMW is the range-topping variant, and you wouldn't be living without a power tailgate for that price. So with that out of the way, let's talk about running cost of this 4 Series. BMW claims combined fuel consumption on the ADR cycle to be 8.2 litres per 100 Ks for this M440i with xDrive. Now, in our week of testing, pretty regularly dipping into that performance, we got 10.5 litres per 100 Ks, which we reckon is pretty good. As for servicing, that's done on a conditions needs basis, with the BMW telling you when you need to head to the BMW dealer for certain things. And over 5 years or 80,000 Ks, the basic service package is going to cost you $1,750, which is about half the price of an Audi S5 Sportback and really on par with cars from Hyundai. It's really affordable to service this BMW M440i xDrive. However, the 3-year 100,000 K warranty is lagging behind rivals like Mercedes-Benz and Jaguar, both of whom have gone to a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty. And finally, over the last 12 months, the medium budget direct customer paid $1,439 to comprehensively insure their BMW 4 Series. Now, everyone's situation varies, and your premium may differ based on things that insurers take into account, such as your driving history, where you live, and whether you garage the car. Now, to be fair to the Gran Coupe, it's not only coupe by name. It does have some things that you'd see traditionally on a BMW coupe, such as the frameless windows, which are a really nice touch and just feel a little bit special. As for the rest of the interior though, it is classic BMW. That's not to say it doesn't feel special, it just doesn't wow or, feel so showy like a Mercedes-Benz interior can tend to. It's just simple. It works though. It works really well. You've got this 10.1-inch touchscreen up here, which is really responsive to your commands. You can get gesture control in this car as well, which means that if I was waving around like this, my volume would be going up and down. So, take it as you will. Simple climate control dials below that, and you've got the classic integration of shortcut buttons as well. Now, this car is fairly conservatively specified. You've got these M Sport seats, which do add a little bit of money to the price, about $1,500, and with a couple of the options packages, brings this car's price up to around $121,000. I'll flash the exact as tested price up there, because you've also got this carbon fiber trim, which I'm not a big fan of, and I certainly wouldn't spend $923 on fitting to my M440i Gran Coupe. The color palette's fairly muted, but easy to clean and look after. Now, as for practicalities, we've got this little flip-up tray thing here where you can store your phone in. There's also wireless charging on this M440i, USB socket, 12-volt socket, and 2 cup holders here, which work really well for smaller bottles and also coffee cups and that sort of thing. And then underneath this armrest, we've got a little bit of more rubberized storage, good for sunglasses cases, odds and ends, and there's a couple more USB-A ports in there as well. Now, in front of me, I've got this really fat steering wheel, and I know we all keep banging on about the fat BMW steering wheel, but over time I've realized it's not so much the actual size of it. I mean, that doesn't bother me too much. It's more the fact that it is wrapped in this squidgy material, which as we get to in the driving impressions means that some of the steering feel that you expect to get from the tiller is robbed from you. I think it's really a lot to do with that squishy wheel, but also obviously power assistant steering and that sort of stuff. While we're on the less good things, the digital driver's display, 12.3 inches in size, is still not as capable as in other manufacturers. Really, the only thing you can do is interface with this little button on the side of the indicator stalk, the oblong BMW indicator stalk, and that cycles through entertainment, gear selection, fuel consumption, and that sort of thing. So it doesn't have the same capabilities as some of its competitors, but whatever. The driving position is extremely comfortable and classic BMW. These M Sport seats are insanely comfortable, nice and puffy and not too firm, but also not too soft. You've obviously got electric adjustment, lumbar, up and down, in and out, and you've got 2-position memory as well as this sliding cushion that gives tall people like me a little bit of extra under thigh support, which is great. And then finally, on the whole, the cabin just feels well polished. You've got wireless Apple CarPlay, this quality that pervades everything, really nice Harman Kardon stereo. It's a nice place to sit in and relax, and while it may not feel as special and as blingy as some other vehicles, it just works, and that's one of the things that BMW really has going for its interiors at the moment. So here in the back seat is where the Gran Coupe really departs from the normal coupe, because obviously you've got doors. You don't have to clamber in through behind the seat, and that means it's easy for getting people in the back here. And it's fairly spacious too, not as much as the 3 Series. I should definitely mention the sloping roofline and inclusion of a panoramic sunroof here in this car means that headroom is slightly compromised, though it is scalloped out for me, so I can just sit in here. Legroom's okay, just enough, and then toe room is pretty tight as well, but actually not as tight as the Lexus RX, so there you go. And then the bench feels a little bit compromised. So over on my right shoulder here, there's obviously quite an intrusion from the wheel well, and that means I'm pushed into the middle. So there's no way you're going to fit 5 people in this car comfortably for more than sort of 20 minutes. There's also a massive hump in the floor here that's going to stop you doing that. But really, for 4 people, it's not too bad. You've also got ISOFIX tabs in the back seat here, so you can fit a baby seat. But the real issue comes with the window, which I'm going to drop now. And as you can see, it only goes down that far. Now, that's a pretty narrow opening, and you can sort of just about get your arm out, but yeah, it's not as much airflow as you're going to get in a regular 3 Series, so this car's really well suited to someone who's a couple and occasionally has to carry younger kids, or occasionally full-size adults in the back, but it's not going to be something you want to be putting 6'2" people in the back of all the time. Though I should say, at least they'll be nice and cool in this M440i because you've got separate air vents with their own climate control back here. So what is this BMW Gran Coupe with a straight six like to drive out on the road? Well, it's exactly how you expect it. I mean, I guess that's a little bit unfair, but it does share its cluster architecture underpinnings with the 3 Series sedan and of course also the 4 Series Coupe, with which it also shares a wheelbase length, though this car is 21mm longer, so a little bit of extra rear overhang. Not that that affects, in theory, how it drives, but the weight distribution is going to be a little bit different, and also this car is about 50 kilos heavier than the Coupe on curb weights. Now, we weighed this at the Chasing Cars office to test the manufacturer's claim, and it was actually lighter, so 1,731 kilograms versus 1,795 for its claimed curb weight. Now that was without a driver, so but still with a full tank of petrol. But you know, that's on the money for a car of this size nowadays. It's not crazy heavy, it's not crazy light, but yeah, not far off. And luckily there's an absolute peach of a straight six engine under this bonnet. The BMW B58, here it has a mild hybrid system, not that you sort of really notice that except for in stop-start traffic where the engine cuts out really smoothly and comes back to life with a real spark. It's also got a really sharp throttle response, especially when you wind it back up to Sport or Sport Plus, for example. It's almost like it's not turbocharged, almost. I say almost because it's not like a naturally aspirated car, but it's so close. Now, the other great thing about this drivetrain is the transmission, the ZF8 speed. It's in all cars, not all cars, but it's in so many cars. But BMW still seem to be the best at finding a calibration for it. I'm going to slam the foot down in comfort mode right now. And you can hear the beautiful sound of this engine and see how quickly it kicks down. It does a great job. It obeys manual mode as well with the paddles behind the steering wheel, and it adds a little bit of extra crispness to the shifts when you lock it into Sport or Sport Plus. Now, let's talk quickly about the 0 to 100 km/h claim for this car, because BMW says 4.7 seconds, so let's put that to the test. So what are the results? Well, it's pretty much exactly what they say. Unsurprisingly, it's not very hard to launch this car. Mash the brake, mash the throttle, off you go, all-wheel drive, that X-Drive sends you into the atmosphere, and yeah, really nicely. Good amount of power, 4.7 seconds pretty much when we averaged the runs going each way, because it was a slight incline going down and then going back up. But yeah, I'm pretty happy to call that as it is, as exactly a 4.7 second 0 to 100 km/h claim. Now, interestingly, I should point out with the all-wheel drive system, it certainly doesn't blunt the way that this car feels out on the open road, because it feels just like a BMW should. It's got that almost front engine rear drive balance, and that's a testament to this rear biased X-Drive system that does shuffle power forwards and backwards, but definitely feels like it's got more of a penchant for sending power to the back wheels, like a BMW should. And that means with your traction not totally disengaged, but in sport mode, DTC Sport, you can feel the rear end of this car kicking out and coming around to help you, especially in wet conditions. But it doesn't feel like an all-wheel drive car in the traditional sense. It just feels like a rear-wheel drive car with ungodly amounts of grip. And I reckon that suits this BMW's character rather nicely. Now, what about the drive modes? Because we're in comfort now. I've got my sport mode, that's Sport Plus. We've got individual setup as well, so you can customize what you want. I've got it pretty much all in sport mode except for the transmission, which I switch between comfort and sport. And I find this car's adaptive damper setup sort of perfect for the bandwidth you expect from an M performance car. It doesn't get as sharp and hard-edged as an M car, but nor does it have any of that crashiness that you used to associate with BMW M Sport products like back in the E90 days, where the car would be quite crashy. No, this is really well judged, and softening it back to comfort mode gives you that extra plushness around town that works really nicely. But even if it was only sport mode dampers all the time, I would find this car not at all tiring. It's really well judged, just a little bit more control and comfort, but without getting untowards. And although these 19-inch alloy wheels may sound big, they are wrapped in 40 series tyres, 245 wide at the front, 255 wide at the back. So there's a nice amount of plush cushion there to keep any hard edge bumps from getting into the cabin. And so feeding into the comfort on a long road trip is actually the NVH and the noise suppression of this car. It's really quiet. They've worked on that from the previous generation 3 and 4 series models quite well, so it's very well insulated in here. You can cruise along on the freeway with your adaptive cruise control highway assist turned on, Harman Kardon speakers, playing your favorite music, and it's just relaxing. And then on a cold day as well, not that it's been cold here in Sydney, pop your heated seats on and it gives a nice relaxing feel to the back. So it's great. It's just it feels like it really hits the nail on the head of what you expect of a 40i xDrive. You know, you've got performance, but not too overtly, and you've got plenty of comfort to relax with this car in as well. Now, really, it sounds like the 440i xDrive is a really fantastic package, and it really is. There's only really one thing that irks me about the driving experience, and that's the steering feel. You just can't quite trust the front end of this 440i like you can some of its competitors. The Audi S5 Sportback has slightly crisper responses to the steering input. I think some of that's not only down to the electric power assisted steering, but also the thick rim. So you can't quite commit as hard as you want on a way into a corner, but on the way out, you can really lean on that all-wheel drive system to fire you out. Now let's talk about safety, because BMW has outfitted a really decent amount of kit to this 440i. You've got frontal AEB with pedestrian and cyclist detection, blind spot monitoring, and lane keep assist. You don't have junction AEB or reverse AEB, unfortunately, but it still managed to get 5 stars in its ANCAP testing procedure. You've also got a nice crisp 360 camera, which helps reversing, because unfortunately, this coupe sort of styling doesn't do great things for the rear visibility, especially rear 3/4 visibility. But as I said, 360 cam, no worries. So what are our opinions on the BMW M440i xDrive Gran Coupe? Well, apart from the long name, I really love this straight six, and obviously you're going to have to really love this straight six to spend the extra $30,000 over the 430i Gran Coupe, but I reckon it's worth it because you're really going to gel with that creamy, smooth engine and that lovely transmission tune. Of course, the extra practicality aided by the liftback and the 2 rear doors means that this 4 Series Coupe is going to fit a family in it much better than the actual 2-door coupe. So another consideration, but at the end of the day, I think a 3 Series is still slightly more practical, especially if you have tall kids. But you can let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this breed of 5-door executive premium sporty vehicle. And while you're down there, we'd also love it if you could hit subscribe and the bell icon if you haven't done so already. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.